My story is a spy story, and it's a story about one of the defining periods of my life. And the fact of the matter is that you will hit that defining period. If you haven't already, you will at some point in your life. And I learned that sometimes we get lucky, but mostly we make our own luck. We put ourselves in a position to succeed. We set goals for ourselves, and we accomplish them using courage, confidence, and determination. So imagine this. You're locked in a room for 8 hours a day, and sometimes more. It's not like I actually got overtime in the FBI. I got comp time that I was never allowed to use, with the most ruthless and dangerous spy in United States history. Imagine feeling unqualified and concerned, knowing you had to succeed, despite the fact that no one had really given you the tools to do so. This is my story. But the road to the FBI led right through here at Auburn. I have to admit that I never planned to stay here. Sorry, a little bit of honest confession today. I really wanted to use Auburn as a stepping stone to go either to the Air Force Academy or the Naval Academy. I hadn't been sure which. But I had gotten into both in a deferred curriculum. So that meant you got in, but everybody and their grandma applied, so we're going to defer you a year, and you need to go find something to do for a year before you can come in. I got into the preparatory schools, but decided, don't really want to just march and sing. I'd like to learn something, so I looked for aerospace engineering schools, and this was the best. Probably still is. So I came here for aerospace engineering, and I started in aerospace engineering. And after a year of aerospace engineering and Air Force ROTC, I realized this might not really be for me. And maybe I'm just doing this because it's what my dad wants me to do. So I dropped out of aerospace and ROTC, which I always felt terrible about, but I decided this is something I need to do. And I ended up in pre-med, then I ended up in architecture, then I debated going into pre-law, and I finally ended up in psychology, because I had a course in high school where I took a psychology course, and I loved it. And I thought, this is going to be fun, and this is something that I want to try and do. And I really want to go into law school, I've decided, so this will really help me out. I still graduated in just over 3 years, which was a mistake. I wish I had stayed a little longer. My other friends who stayed in engineering were taking about 5 years to graduate and having a lot of fun while I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. But don't take 7, please. Get on with it at some point. I left Auburn, and after graduating in 3.5 years, I thought, oh, great, what do I do now? And so what I decided to do was basically the default thing everyone was doing in 1995. I became a consultant. There's still lots of them around, but back then everybody was becoming a consultant, and nobody really knew what a consultant was. But we did things, and we consulted, and we made money, and that sounded good to me, so I ended up back in Washington, D.C., which is not where I wanted to end up. I was doing basically accounting work, damage assessment work for law firms, but really bored me to tears. It turned out that all I did was work on Excel. So, a year to the day, I quit. And I decided that, and I'm not trying to say that I'm mostly a quitter, but I decided this wasn't for me, and I need to find the next thing. Maybe there is a theme in my life. I applied pretty much everywhere that I could that sounded like something that would allow me to serve my country. I still felt bad about leaving aerospace and not going to one of the academies, and so I applied to the FBI, the NSA, the DEA, the CIA, the Secret Service, and a couple more acronyms, and just waited to see who actually responded, yes, we like you, which took a very long time and was a miserable experience. But I quit my job. So I found my way into the Foreign Claims Settlement Commission of the United States, which is the only forum where an American citizen can go and sue a foreign country. And I worked on the Veterans of Foreign War Gulf War Syndrome. So all of our soldiers who had gone and fought in Iraq were coming back with this Gulf War Syndrome that then everybody said didn't exist. We're trying to prove it existed, and we successfully sued Iraq, which meant that they had to pay reparations or undergo trade sanctions. And I realized that what I really want to do is do something that makes the world different. And so I waited, and I got into the FBI. I debated joining the FBI or the DEA. At the end of the day, I couldn't decide which one. And I realized sitting there, having been accepted into both and just waiting to see who gave me a Quantico date first for training, was that my life was about to go this way. The FBI had a certain science and intellectual side to it. I was going to stay in D.C. DEA meant that they would take me far away from my family because they don't want you near there, and I probably would have shot someone within 2 weeks of graduating from Quantico. And those are the statistics. And I just decided I'll pick based on who picks me. And it was the FBI, and that's how I got in. I joined the FBI really out of patriotism, and I had this restless need to do something that mattered, and that mattered to me. So here you go. In order to join and get this, I weathered the very long and grueling process of establishing that I was generally a good person, who had not sold secrets to a foreign power, hadn't tortured small animals, and didn't have a drinking or gambling problem, or a proclivity for Russian prostitutes. All these things are very important. In other words, I passed the test for foreign counterintelligence, national security clearance of top secret, special, compartmentalized intelligence. All that really meant was that I could see anything that I was supposed to see, but probably shouldn't be looking at things that I wasn't supposed to see. I graduated from the FBI Counterintelligence Academy in Quantico, Virginia, and I started my real-life training on the streets of Washington, D.C., chasing down Russians. Because those were the people who were more liable to spit on the windshield of your car rather than shoot you when they caught you following them. My job was to be a ghost, a counterterrorism and counterintelligence operative, and I followed targets pretty much wherever they went. I followed spies. I followed every flavor of terrorist, here legally and illegally. I followed people that I can't even mention because it is still classified even all these years later. I used disguises. I changed cars. I changed clothes. I used to keep a beard and glasses in my car, and I would spirit them on real quick if the guy turned around and saw me, and then I had to keep following him. I put on a suit like this, and I snuck into office buildings and pretended I was a lawyer that I would later become. I dressed laid back. I went on all sorts of college campuses, which I was kind of used to after being here. I followed people in the bars and clubs, which generally a little bit more fun than other places. I went shopping with my targets, I ate with them, I walked with them, I drove with them, I listened to them sleep, and more often than not, I listened to them snore, and sometimes something else to talk about. And they never knew I was there. While I was in the FBI chasing terrorists and spies, I attended night school at George Washington University Law School, a fact that did not make it in the movie only because Billy Ray, the director, thought that no one would actually believe that I was doing all this stuff and still going to law school every night. But literally, I would go work the job during the day for my shift, which was sitting on Hanson until he left, and I would have to stay there until he did. And then I would go meet the real-life Kate. So, if you've seen the movie Breach, how many people have seen the movie Breach? There you go. So, Laura Linney plays Kate in the movie. She's my handler. She was the only contact that I had when I was working the investigation. And she would pick me up afterwards, and then we would drive to GW Law, and then I would go to class, and then normally she'd pick me up after, and after that, take me back to headquarters where we would search the office with a whole search team, and we would do the debrief on the drive back and forth. So it was agonizing. But look, I went to law school because I knew that even doing what I was doing and being very successful, I was about to hit a glass ceiling in my career, which is what happens. I looked for the law degree just so I could readily transfer into an agent's position or do something more. So where I was about to hit the top that I could do until someone died and I could become a supervisor, because those people never left those positions. I really wanted to expand my studies into a graduate degree, which would also allow me a single focus of study. So those of you who are undergrads, who are considering graduate school or not, the one thing I can tell you, and encourage you to do it, is that the wonderful thing about graduate school is, unlike the undergrad degree, where you have to do a lot of different things to sort of focus on finding what you like to do, which is what I muddled through, the graduate degree lets you just do what you want to do, which is really wonderful. It turned out for me that that was law, and I love law. And it turned out that I was also pretty good at it. But back to the story. One morning I received a phone call from my supervisor. And this is a story that didn't make it into the movie, and I've always wondered why, but this is a really great story. So, those of you who have bosses, imagine that you get a call from your boss on a Sunday morning about 8 in the morning. Those of you who do not have bosses, because you're students, imagine it's the dean of the school calling you, right? And saying, look, Eric, I need to meet with you today. I look at my watch and I say, yeah, boss, well, it's Sunday at 8, but I'll come into the office, just let me get dressed, get some coffee in me. And he said, no need to come to the office, I'm parked outside. Okay, this does not happen. It doesn't happen in normal life, it doesn't happen in civilian life, it doesn't happen in military life, and it sure as hell doesn't happen in the FBI. When your supervisor calls you, you jump and you go to them. But he's parked outside. My first thought is that one of my Russian targets had figured out my name and had given me up, and they will manufacture information, and I was about to get arrested and interrogated, and this was going to be extremely embarrassing. So when I walked out the door, I thought, okay, separate him from his wife. That's the first thing we do. Have him come outside in a neutral area and then take him down. So I'm looking up, because that's where I normally don't look. But it's just my boss sitting out there, Gene, in his car. And I said, right? I watch, and he sits in the car, and he gives me this grin. He goes, have you ever heard of Robert Hansen? I said, no, I haven't. And he said, good, because we think he's a spy and we want you to help us catch him. I looked at him and I said, you had to come all the way here at 8 in the morning on a Sunday on my day off to tell me that? That's what I do. I catch spies or terrorists, whichever flavor you want. Why come here to tell me that? He said, no, you don't understand. We don't want you to ghost him. We want you to work undercover with him. I looked at him and I said, I've never really done that before. The face-to-face talk to the target thing, that's not my thing. So I think you'll be good at it, and you're really all we have, so I need to know yes or no right now, because my next stop is to go see the director, Louis Freeh. But what are you going to say, right? You got to say yes. One, it sounded kind of cool to me. Two, they thought I was going to be good at it, so I wanted to prove myself. And three, I said, I got to sell this to my wife, and if I'm going to go take the computer job, which was working for a bigger mousetrap called information assurance, so a computer job at headquarters, a computer job, you know, I got to sell it to her somehow, and it seems to me like I should get more paid for that. And he looked at me and said, I'll work in a little bit more overtime with you. And I was sold. In February 2001, former agent Robert Philip Hansen was found guilty of treason against the United States. Over a period of 22 years, he systematically and deliberately sold our country's key intelligence to the former Soviet Union. In fact, he sold it to the Soviet Union, then he sold it to Russia, which, if you're at all interested in political science or geopolitics, he survived a regime change. And if you're interested in intelligence work, then your eyes are opening wide, because nobody survives a regime change. What happened is he spied for the Soviet Union. And when the Soviet Union fell, go Reagan, all of the KGB agents were pulling information out of file cabinets and running to sell it to the highest bidder, because they were top dogs and they didn't want to go beat their swords into plowshares and go work for a living. So they were selling information. And many of those Cold War spies we caught during my career were people that we had good sources selling out. No one ever caught Hansen. He survived that because they never knew who he was. He was that good. And so he continued to spy for Russia, even after he spied for the Soviet Union. And during that incredible shelf life for a spy, and Dr. Norton has gone through some of this, he gave up a couple other things. The U.S. contingency of government plans. That means, where do we send the president, the vice president, the cabinet, and Congress, and etc., when the bombs start to fall, or a catastrophic event happens, or there's a concentrated attack on the country. Of course, he gave up nuclear secrets. Remember, this is an old Cold War spy that continued on spying for a long time. Undercover operations and investigations, which was very damning to me. The world had to wonder if our covers had been blown, and everything we were doing was an enormous waste of time. And he did kill people. He killed people by giving up the names of those who could finger him. Those sources we had in the Soviet Union who could come back and perhaps give information that would lead to him. And he knew when he dropped that information to his Russian handlers, they would kill those people, and they would never talk. And finally, he blew holes in the FBI's ability to conduct counterintelligence. And that's very important. He basically systematically screwed over the FBI. And everything that we were doing in our ways and means, and the CIA's ways and means, and those sorts of things that we do to collect intelligence and protect things here in the United States, and to keep spies from stealing information, to keep buildings from falling, those sort of things, he was giving up. And that might sound like somebody else to you, although we're not talking about Edward Snowden tonight. A Russian asset provided us a file of information. This is how we learn about Robert Hansen. I mean, we don't just luck onto the guy walking down the street and bump into Robert Hansen and look at him and go, you're creepy and I think you're a spy. It doesn't really work that way. You have to build this case. And it takes time. It's meticulous. So, a Russian asset decides he doesn't want to live in Russia anymore. He wants to have a really good life here with a lot of money in his pocket. And so he sells a very slim file. And in it, there is a tape that has a recording of Hansen's voice and a partial fingerprint, because Hansen used to wrap his stuff in plastic and then literally drop the documents under a footbridge in Vienna, Virginia, Foxstone Park. And that's how he would drop it to the Russians. He'd set a signal, which was a piece of tape on a sign, or a telephone pole in this case, and then the Russians would drive by and see the signal and say, aha, my secrets are here. They would go pick up the secrets, And then they would set a different signal that would tell Hansen, we've just left you money in a hole in the ground. He'd go dig it up, and this is the way that they would exchange information for about 22 years. Robert Hansen, unfortunately, had made one mistake in his career. That partial fingerprint, which was circumstantial, and he had called the Russians once to warn them off about a spy we were about to arrest. And so they recorded his voice because they were desperate to figure out who he was. They had no idea. And in fact, they thought he worked for the CIA. And like I said, it was that good. So we suspected him. Here are our problems. He's about to retire in April of 2001, and now we're in December. So we've got a really short time frame to keep him in the FBI. He disliked most people, and he was very difficult to talk to. And by the way, that is a great idea if you're a spy. The more you say, the more you have an opportunity to do something dumb and trip up and get caught. So he was very quiet. He was called a cold fish. He was also called Dr. Death. Part of that was his demeanor. The other nickname was the Mortician. The other part was he had one black suit that he wore every single day. I never saw him change it, and all he would do is rotate his tie. And I certainly hope he changed his shirt and his underwear. Finally, we had to catch this guy red-handed. We had to catch him red-handed because we needed to learn what he'd done. It was actually more important than punishment. We had to catch him red-handed so we could get him for espionage. Espionage carries the death penalty. In fact, when we did catch him, there were a number of counts of espionage, a number of ways that we could have killed him as a traitor. The reason being not because we really wanted to give him the death penalty, but because we wanted to put pressure on him and make him talk. What'd you do? What'd you give up? Because we don't want to scrap everything, and we want to fix the programs that you've ruined for us. So we built a mousetrap. We built the information assurance section in the FBI, and it was the first foray into FBI cybersecurity. And we put the greatest spy in US history in charge of it, and gave him access to everything, hoping that he would take some of that stuff and go drop it to the Russians under his bridge, hoping to get money in his hole in the ground, and we could catch him red-handed. My job was to watch him. First thing I had to do was watch him and see what he was taking, if he was taking, whether he was removing secrets, which was difficult because the guy just walked the halls like a crazy person in an insane asylum. I had to get him to feel comfortable. That was a lot harder with somebody who doesn't like to talk. Oh, by the way, one note, FBI headquarters and walking the halls, any of you who have been in Haley Center know what it's like to be in FBI headquarters. I think the same person designed both buildings. It makes no sense whatsoever. The first thing anybody does when they go into Haley Center is get lost. The first thing everybody does when they go into FBI headquarters is get lost. Being in FBI headquarters is like being on an aircraft carrier, if any of you have had the opportunity to do that. You have no idea where you're going, and you have pretty much one route to get to where you are, to where you need to be, and if you deviate, you're screwed, and you might end up on the 7th floor where the director is, and that gets you in a lot of trouble, which is what I ended up doing. So just a little comparison between Auburn and FBI. I like to say that my experiences as a liberal arts major in Haley Center helped in learning how to navigate FBI headquarters. And we take whatever we can and use it where we will. But I had to get him to feel comfortable. I had to get him to feel that this was a real job, not just a joke, not just a mousetrap. And so we actually had to do work. We had to try to achieve cybersecurity for the FBI headquarters, and he actually ended up being kind of good at that. Finally, I had to catch him, and that's a pretty difficult statement where they say, help us find the information we need to catch him red-handed. We need to find where he's taking information. We need to find something that's going to lead us, and just keep your eyes open and figure it out. But here's the thing about spies. Spies are really suspicious. I was a spy. I was a spy hunter. I'm a really suspicious person. I'm constantly looking at what's going on around me. It's been beat into me. It started in Quantico, and it ended up being beat into me every day out on a career. And now I'm one of those overprotective fathers that my wife has to say, stop, the kids will be okay. You don't have to create a bubble around everything. But spies are suspicious. Spies are not paranoid. Because as soon as you move from suspicion into paranoia, you're paralyzed. Pretty much for everyone in the entire world. But there were only 2 of us in the room. So this guy who's suddenly given his dream job so he wouldn't retire, and given access to everything in the world, him knowing he's a spy, has to wonder, has to be suspicious whether we know that he's a spy. Do we know that he knows that we know that he knows that he's a spy, or something like that, right? You see where it can drive you a little crazy. And that's the espionage gang, ladies and gentlemen. So, there's only 2 of us in the room, so he needs a point of attack, and it's not like he's going to attack the copier machine, so he's got to go after me. And he made my life a living hell. And what he did is constant bothering me, badgering me, doing all sorts of things to me to try to see if I would mess up. So really, the first job I had was don't screw up. Make him feel comfortable, make him feel this is real, and don't let him know that you're a spy hunter trying to catch him. We engaged in a war of dialogue. And Hansen tried to make me make a mistake, and desperately trying not to make that mistake that was going to ruin the case. And I realized that in order to beat this case, what I had to do was change the paradigm. I needed to act. In fact, I needed to stop reacting to Robert Hansen, because that's what he was doing to me. He was winning. He was making me react. He was constantly sending me back on my heels. And as long as that was happening, I wasn't engaging in an investigation. So I had to stop reacting to what he was doing. And I needed to play my own game, not his. And like I said, I needed to act and take control of the situation. And the fact of the matter is, if you want to excel and not just succeed in life, if you want to get above that kick-ass line, then that's what you have to do. And there'll be moments in your life, there'll be moments right now, and certainly in your professional careers when you get to that point or you're already there, where you will have that ability to act and take control of what's happening. And that's where you really make your best success. So I decided to rise above the little stuff so I could attack the big picture. And what I needed to do was get him to react to me and turn the tables on him. And so that's why I say I had to change the paradigm. So what I did was I made him angry. Sounds stupid, right? He's the guy with the gun, and I was not issued a firearm at the time. And we're in a secure room, a skiff, that the audio pickup never worked well, and the cameras weren't pointed in the right direction. So it wouldn't be too hard for him to shoot me, close the door, and maybe later that night someone would have come to find out where I was because of that communication. By then he'd be in Moscow. So making him angry was a little tough. That was one of my jobs. They said, we're trying to build a psych profile of the guy. If you find an opportunity, get him really pissed at you and see what he does. Thank you. Can't I just make him cry? We need to know what he's going to do when he's sad, right? No. We need to know if when we arrest him, he's going to be angry and he's going to come out shooting. Okay, fine. So I was sort of looking for that chance. And we had this moment where we really wanted to search his car. We wanted to take his whole car apart, search every little bit of it, put some technology in it, do whatever we could to it. And we needed him away from the office for a while. He'd come and park in headquarters. So I set up this visit to the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, to look at their cybersecurity. And while we were there, they were going to search his car. And I had arranged for the big black SUV. And unfortunately, my biggest enemy in the FBI was Murphy. Murphy's Law. Anything that will go wrong, can go wrong, will go wrong, so plan for it. We walk around about 3 floors. He's starting to get more and more pissed off. And he finally looks at me and he goes, Eric, you have failed. This is unbelievable. We're going to take my car. I'm thinking, no. You're going to take his car. Everybody's set up to search the damn thing. I really need the car to be here. I've screwed up the whole lot for today. I'm going to really get it from Kate tonight. And they're going to think that I'm not succeeded in this investigation. Because there were plenty of people who thought I was a bad choice. And I decided, well, I can take this. I can make lemonade out of lemons. I'll just make him angry. And so I got in his face and I said, we're taking the SUV. We're going to walk around until we find it. And he literally grabbed me by the shirt and lifted me up a little, got right in my face. The guy was like 6'3". I'm about 5'11" if I'm wearing these shoes. And I'm thinking, what do I do now? What's the appropriate thing to do now? Do I attack him? Is that what he expects? Do I do nothing? How do I make sure that, how do I put, because I've just pushed this a little bit too far. And he's screaming in my face, why do you insist that we take my car? Or the SUV, why can't we take my car? And I looked at him and said, boss, relax. Real reason is because we got to show up at the DIA rolling in style. We're FBI, man. We got to show up in a big black SUV because that's what we do. You're too important to show up in your silver car. It's a nice car. It's a little small, don't you think? And he looked at me and he kind of smiled and he said, we're going to take my car. Blown me up, made him mad, got a checkpoint for that. I gained his confidence and I made him trust me. I didn't act like a normal undercover operative. You usually don't piss off the guy when you're doing this. We went to church together. And then what I did is I stole his Palm Pilot. The Palm Pilot was a smoking gun. Dr. Norton was completely right. Criminals have routines. They just do. All sorts of criminals, from the drug dealers and the petty thieves all the way up to, that are stealing from 7-Eleven, all the way up to master spies, have routines. They do little things that are important to them because those are the things that keep them safe. And Robert Hanson's routine was he had this Palm 3, the greatest invention back then, because we're talking 1990. We're talking 2000 technology, right? So the big Palm 3 was like the worst sandwich wallet you've ever seen in my life, like a Dagwood. He would put that big thing in his back pocket. I don't know why he enjoyed walking around like that. And every time he sat down at his desk, he'd put it in his bag. And every time he stood up, he'd put it right back in his back pocket. And I thought, this is really curious. I watched him do it over and over again. He did that, which was weird. He'd jingle his keys in his pocket and he'd click the hell out of his pen, all of which drove me nuts. And I thought, he loves this thing. He talks about it more than he talks about his children. He says that every executive has to have one, or you're not a real executive. And he also felt that the Palm Pilot was something that he had reboasted, that the Palm Pilot was something he had written the encryption himself, and not even the idiots in the FBI could crack it, because those techs knew nothing about cybersecurity, and they should have listened to him all these years. That, to me, was a clue, everybody. Crack investigator, right? And I said, we got to get that thing from him. So here's the first thing I'd like to say for those who've seen the movie Breach. Ryan Phillippe, a very dear friend of mine, can do everything as Eric O'Neill the first time, when in real life, it often took me many different tries to get these things to work. And so we tried a number of different shenanigans, is the best way to put it, to get this Palm Pilot away from him. And finally, one worked. I said, look, guy's got a huge ego, gets angry easily. If we can get him off center, if we can make him feel that he's not in control, maybe he'll forget the damn thing. So we had an assistant director surprise him. Came into his office and said, hey, Hanson, grab your stuff, we're going to go shoot. And he sort of, no, now's a terrible time. He said, I don't think you understand. Get your stuff and follow me now. Oh, we're putting $20 on it, and there's no way you're going to win. And he picked up his firearm and his gun belt and his ear protection and eye protection, and sullenly followed the guy out of the office and forgot for once to do that routine, because he, for the first time, was back on his heels. He had reacted, not acted. And so he goes down to the firing range, which is in the basement, and remembering the mistake with the SUV, I had arranged to have someone down there with the premier bit of technology for the year 2000, the SkyTel two-way alphanumeric pager, the iPhone before the iPhone existed, yeah. And I said, page me when he's there. So I get the page, in pocket, shooting now. I said, okay. And I grab the Palm Pilot, go in the back, grab the Palm Pilot, grab a data card while I'm at it. I open all the pockets, and I think, this is wonderful. Run down 3 flights of stairs and give them to the tech team that's been sitting there for weeks, just hoping that I finally got the damn thing. And they start decrypting it. They say, man, he's got a lot of encryption, so we're just going to ghost it 1-to-1, and we'll break it later. I said, whatever, just do it quick. Because as soon as I handed it off, I get another page. Guy's out of pocket coming to you. Which means that he had fired off, apparently he fired off a few rounds, realized, wow, I left the Palm Pilot up with Eric. Do I really trust him? Oh no, I'm suspicious. Now I'm feeling a little paranoid. I gotta go check. And he started up. Now I timed it about 9 minutes if you ran, and this guy didn't run. He sort of galumphed like this, which I had to explain to Chris Cooper over and over again for the movie. And so he's coming up. I get it done with maybe 2 minutes to spare. There's plenty of time, run up 3 flights, get in the office, slam the door behind me, and put it back, and go over to his bag to put it back in, and kneel down before the bag, and I realize, oops, I got 2 devices, 4 pockets, and I can't remember which pockets they came out of. And I'm starting to think, well, I was an Auburn psychology student. There's that thing where you hypnotize yourself, and you go back in time, and you see the event happening, and you read the license plate as Daddy drives away, or something like that. I don't know. I was really stressed out. And I'm trying to do that sort of Zen stuff when I hear him coming through the door. And what saved me was this was a SCIF, a secure room. And so he had to turn a combination lock and punch in a code and wave his SACS badge against it and the electronic lock, and then finally open the stupid thing. And while he's doing all this, I'm thinking, oh well, drop, zip, 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 and I ran back to my desk. I was just lucky sometimes. You're lucky. He comes in the office, gives me a really nasty look, goes into his office, slams the door, and I hear zip, zip. And I'm thinking to myself, here's where I should run. This is where I should not be sitting here when he comes out, right? I should probably not be sitting in my desk. I should be down the hall. I should be out of the building at this point. Why am I still here thinking about this? There's no way I got that right. I dropped out of aerospace engineering, but I'm still good at math, and those odds are not good. And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, then I think to myself, suspicion to paranoia, if I'm not here when he comes out, he's already right at that line, and this case is blown. So I really owe it to the case, and I owe it to myself to try to do whatever damage control I can do, because I just assumed that it was the wrong pocket, to fix this. I'm just going to have to lie really, really well. And he comes out and he looks at me and he says, were you in my office? And I said, yeah, I put a memo in your inbox. What's the problem? And he just says, I don't want you in there ever again. The world is not enough. The most endearing and frightening part about success is really that we're the masters of our own destiny, right? We rise and fail directly proportional to how hard we work, how determined we are, and how easily we can act to rise above the small stuff and excel at addressing the big picture. You know, it turns out that that Palm Pilot was exactly what we needed to catch Robert Hansen. And I got the right pocket, because a few weeks after that, he went and made that drop for the Russians, and we were there ahead of him. Because when we decrypted it, we learned that not only the date that he was going to make the drop, but the exact place he would make the drop was on the Palm Pilot. And so we caught him red-handed for espionage. And we were able to get him to plead guilty so that we could spend the next almost half a decade interrogating him to find out what he had done and correct those problems. Now I want to get back to the Harvard story for a minute. And then, of course, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. You know, at first when my friend confessed to me that they had been sitting up there on that deck looking over the harbor and and that I wanted the whole thing and they just wanted to be content with what they was, I felt concerned that they thought of me as someone who was never satisfied. Staring at a taillight, drinking coffee, really wanting to go to the bathroom but not being able to, hoping that someone got in the car and it moved. I think it would be fun to do the real fun stuff, not so fun to do the monotonous case building type stuff. But it was a much better job when I was 26, and now at 41, it'd probably be a lot different. Although it would be great to go back on the street every once in a while with surveillance, and I have done that now and again with my group, Georgetown group. Every once in a while, as part of our case, we will run a surveillance, and sometimes I'll decide I'm joining in today. And what I did to get back to it and have fun is I started a enterprise with the International Spy Museum in DC. And I do what's called spy chasers, and we take a bunch of people and I give them a quick primer on surveillance, and then we go down and they have to follow a rabbit. And I'm the team leader, and I tell people get the eye and pick them up, and it's a lot of fun for everybody. It's a great event. The question right there.
Okay, know that you're practicing law, so can you tell us what form of law you're practicing and why you chose that?
Sure. So leaving, when I left the FBI, I took a job with DLA, actually Piper Rudnick, which then became, it was Piper Rudnick, Marbury and Wolf, which then became Piper Rudnick, which then became DLA, Piper Rudnick, Gray, Carey, Werner Lipfert, which then became DLA Piper. That's how law firms work, and that's why I left after 5 years. I did government contracts law and internal investigations of companies. So the board of company would hire me to go find out what the heck had gone wrong and who needed to go and what needed to be changed. And I was a pretty good investigator, so that was a natural fit. When I left DLA Piper and I started my own company, the Georgetown Group, it was in a terrible economy. And I wanted to find a way to make sure that I could protect the benefits for my family. And having a startup in a down economy is a really bad idea. Just out of nowhere, my biggest pro bono client when I was at DLA Piper, that's the client I work for free, which is a charity in Silver Spring, Maryland, called Global Communities, asked me to come on board as their general counsel. So I said, I'll come on board as the general counsel, but only part-time. Let me have flexible hours. I don't really need a lot of pay. What I need you to do is just cover my benefits for me and my family. So I serve as the general counsel for, it's a large international NGO, charitable NGO that does development and humanitarian assistance work in 22 some countries, drop or add a country, in the worst places in the world to improve lives for people, which is incredibly rewarding. And I'd like to say that the work that I do there is even better than the work that I did in counterterrorism, because what we're doing is we're changing lives and keeping people from, for example, in Pakistan, going up in the hills and joining the Taliban, because we give them an alternative thing they can do. So I did that. My focus is, of course, the Georgetown group, but I still get to give back that way. So that's it. Being a general counsel is a wonderful way to practice law. You get to be the boss. You get to make all the decisions. You only report to a president and a board, and you get to practice law generally and have a lot of fun learning a lot of new things every day. Yes, sir.
I just have a question about your perceptions, since you've both been in the FBI and investigations primarily. What are some of the differences between the ways that, let's say, a corporation, whether it's a Defense Department contractor or whatever, deals with their internal security problems and the way the FBI dealt with theirs?
Well, night and day, depending, of course, on that. The question for those of you in the back is differences between a corporation who might deal with internal penetrations versus the FBI. I mean, obviously, the FBI has a robust ability to investigate whatever they want, with a lot of assets to do it, and be able to constantly look at their own people and background. Not so much a corporation. And depending on the size and complexity of the corporation, they might do a little bit or they might do none. And a lot of what I do with the Georgetown group is help counsel corporate clients to understand the things they can do to catch, the term you're looking for is the trusted insider. The person who's trusted within the network who then decides to go rogue for whatever reason, either sell it to a foreign power, sell it to the corporation up the street, take it and develop it himself for something or other, but essentially steal secrets and technology from the company. And it is a hard practice to find those people. But what you need is training and controls. Corporations are not really that great at it yet, but after Snowden, they're really desperate to figure it out. Yes, sir.
You kind of alluded to the way you feel about what Snowden did. And how do you feel about maybe some of the things that it exposed about how government organizations are doing things that maybe the general population, or at least a large portion of the population, would not be particularly comfortable?
Right. The question is about Snowden, and then it goes on a little bit in what Snowden did and what I feel about it. And I'm paraphrasing, but I'll get to it. Don't worry. Here's what I feel about. If you boil it down, this is what I think about Snowden. I'm going to pin me about it. I'm not very happy with what he did. As a former counterintelligence operative who really worked to stop people like him, I think what he did is pretty bad. And the reason is he's just made the NSA have to throw out every single program they have. And if you were with me at lunch today, we talked about this at length, which was great. But the NSA has to start over because they have no idea what he gave up. And that will cost us billions. And that will also cost us, has cost us severe reputational problems around the world. Now, that said, what Snowden revealed, I was not very happy about learning is occurring. Some of the things, like the prison program, forcing companies to give up data on their users, and sort of the heavy-handed approach. I can understand it, but I think that there are some aspects that could have been more transparent. But that doesn't make him right. Because when you work in a classified environment, you don't know everything. You only know a little piece of it. And he didn't have a right to choose to release that. I think he could have done it better. If it was me, and I saw it, and I complained, and everybody ignored me, maybe I would have found an ultra-liberal senator that really hates this sort of thing and disclosed it there, and then turned myself into the FBI and said I'm a patriot, and I think that this is a travesty of justice, and this is why I disclosed this stuff, and now people know about it, and the media circus would have protected him. But going to China and then Russia and giving them all our secrets, forget about it. No way. That's an act of cowardice. And Russia is just using him as the poster child of why Americans are a joke. Even that last conference he did, where he's sitting there and he has the Constitution behind him, and the Russians are selectively deciding what questions he gets, and ignoring every single question that has anything to do with Crimea or Sochi, because he was getting a lot of those questions. It makes sort of a travesty of everything he's saying. He's only 30 years old. Maybe he didn't think it through. Yes?
Two quick questions. What would you change about the movie? And
If you come up with it, I'll start on the first. What would I change about the movie? That's a great question, and not one I get. I think I probably would pull that shooting scene out, only because I usually have to explain why that never happened. He never shot at me in the woods. But really, what I would have liked to add was something that would have made the movie longer and really not added anything to it. But there were a lot of scenes between me and Juliana, me and my wife. So Ryan and Caroline DeBerno, Eric and Juliana, whatever. I get a little mixed up. But those scenes between me and my wife, all that acting between Ryan and Caroline that was cut, those were my favorite scenes when I was on set watching it, because that's what really brought me back. I mean, that was what the case was about for me. It was catching the spy, but it was also staying married and being incredibly fearful that I was going to fail there, because I couldn't fail over here with this case, and that meant I made sacrifices over here in the marriage, and I really wanted to keep both going. So it was juggling all those balls that was the most difficult part of that investigation for me. And those scenes really brought that to home. And I think that also those scenes, if they had stayed in the movie, make the Juliana character a lot more likable. And when they cut a lot of that stuff, that it makes her look a little bit more bitchy. And that really wasn't the case. She really was wonderfully supportive. And when the case was over and I was permission to tell her, she wasn't mad and she wasn't upset. She just looked at me and she said, "Now I understand." She's very cool. Her name's Juliana. We call her Cooliana.
I remembered my second question.
Okay.
Do you think you'll ever speak to him, to Hanson?
I better do it soon. Will I ever speak to Hanson? I better do it soon, because if he is not certifiably insane, he will be any moment now. He's got 23 hours of solitary in Supermax prison, which is one of the 10 worst prisons in the world. And that's including prisons such as Abu Ghraib and other places in Russia and Saudi Arabia and etc. He gets 1 hour a day to go walk around the courtyard, but the Supermax was designed so that the prison population would have no contact with guards. He doesn't even get to talk to them. The idea being that these are the most violent people who have hurt guards in the past and who can't be controlled in a traditional prison, so let's build this really nasty place where they never have to come into contact with guards. When you're isolated from other people, as a human being, you go crazy. There's no other solution. It doesn't matter how sociopathic you are, you will go completely insane, because we need that communication, we need that sense of society. It's just ingrained in us. He's got to be nuts by now.
Well, do you think that now, since he's so deprived from communication, that he would finally start answering questions that he hadn't been?
He shut down and decided that one day that he was just never going to answer another question. Held that line. Yeah, he's not answering questions anymore. I could ask to see him, but I know the guy. I mean, he would use it as a power play. I'd fly all the way out to Colorado, and I would have to sit around until one day he decided that, yes, today is the day you can see me. First of all, I got to get permission from the FBI. Then I got to go out there. And then I know I would show up that morning to go see him, and oh, Mr. Hanson has said he doesn't want to see you today. All right, I'll leave. Come back the next day. No, he doesn't want to see you today. Do I really want to go through that? Because I can really see him doing that. Sure, if I ever really write a book, I'll think about it, but I'll get the publisher to pay for that. Yes, ma'am.
Did you have any really neat spy tools when you were in the FBI?
I'm sorry? Did I need spy tools? Oh, I had everything. I had the coolest stuff. I had stuff before anybody knew that it was cool and out there. We had the science and technology department that was just kept coming up with cooler stuff. And if the stuff wasn't cool enough, we could go to Quantico, where they had a whole tech team who would build us cool stuff if we could come up with it. I had the best photography equipment you could get. I had a thermal scanner. The stupid thing was cryo it was cooled with a cryo chamber that sat there on your shoulder, which is scary because you hear it humming. But you could literally follow a target and see where they'd been by where they touched a rock or a tree. And so you never had to be close to them. No, we had very, very cool things. So we had lots of cool things I can't talk about. You have a question, Ryan?
Yeah, I assume that Robert Hansen never saw the movie.
No, it's probably a good assumption.
Yeah.
I wonder, though,
I don't
I
know.
wonder if somebody said, hey man, watch this, and stuck a TV where he couldn't smash it.
What do you think, how do you think he would feel about how he was portrayed? I know he's got a large ego.
I think Robert Hansen would have absolutely loved the movie and been pissed off that Chris Cooper did not get an Academy Award. As was I.
Let's thank our speaker. Thank you for an outstanding lecture. I much appreciate you coming and the interaction that you had with all of us. Much appreciated. As a small token of our appreciation and a remembrance for you of your time here, I'd like to present you with this plaque.
This is excellent. Thank you so much.
Nice lecture. So, thank you very much. We much appreciate it. Oh.